So wanted to take you guys through why the 100 series Land Cruiser generation is becoming one of the most loved generations. Contrary to popular belief, some people think this is the most hated generation. I certainly can tell you that is not so. Speak to a few owners, speak to the people who actually own the 100 series, and many of them will even tell you that they're not ready to upgrade to the 200 series because of the charm and just the overall behavior and refinement of the 100 series generation. So in today's video, I wanted to discuss why the 100 series generation is the most loved and what are the different facets of this generation that makes so many people so attached to them and not particularly willing to upgrade yet to the 200 series. Now granted guys, the 100 series generation, the used versions are becoming a bit cheaper, and so a lot more enthusiasts and 4x4 guys are getting into this generation. But what I must mention is that you guys have to remember, after the Land Cruiser 80 series, which was a true off-roader twin solid axle, go anywhere kind of vehicle, but what Toyota had to do when they were thinking about and bringing in the 100 series was Toyota really wanted to make the Land Cruiser a lot more drivable. So the main mission for Toyota, coming from 80 series to 100 series, is make this vehicle much more livable, much easier to drive and smoother, and so just much easier to get in and get out of this vehicle on a daily basis and daily drive it. And what we got from that is basically ultra refinement, a very refined powertrain, and that powertrain of course consisted of the first V8 that Toyota ever made, the 2UZ FE. I mean the first V8 they ever made in a Land Cruiser, and that beautiful engine was coupled with a fantastic 4-speed or 5-speed transmission, automatic transmission. And what that does, coupled with the independent suspension, so they did away with the solid axle in the front and they brought in independent front suspension. Now what happens when you bring in independent front suspension is a dramatic increase in comfort versus those solid axle vehicles, and that is exactly what the 100 series generation brought. Ultra comfort, independent front suspension coupled with the hydraulic suspension, and it just made this the S-Class of Land Cruisers, honestly. Very refined, very low sound here in the cabin, very enjoyable to drive, light steering, particularly in this Land Cruiser Cygnus, which for you guys watching in the US is as good as your LX 470s, and just an incredibly light steering. So the vehicle is very easily maneuverable. The engine sounds unbelievable, the V8, but it is not loud in any way. It's not in your face. It's much more of that subtle V8, you know, that very nice sounding, but in the background, not constantly noise coming into the cabin. A beautiful rumble of the V8 in the background, and a good amount of sound deadening in this vehicle has just made the 100 series Land Cruiser a very comfortable family wagon. And the other thing that I must mention about the 100 series, guys, is that when it came out, you know, a lot of people felt it was a soft Land Cruiser. A lot of people misunderstand the Land Cruiser 100 series because coming from the 80, it looked a lot of a softer Land Cruiser. But it has now been 25, 30 years since the first Land Cruiser 100 series came out, and this generation has already proven itself. It has gone to all corners of the planet, and it's just a very, very formidable off-roader and especially on-roader. I must mention that in conditions like this with highway driving, there is no car I would rather be in than this Land Cruiser 100 series generation. And I mean that on top of the 200 series generation as well, guys. The refinement and the comfort and the way that this vehicle drives, I would much rather prefer it than the 200 series. The 200 series has more torque, the accelerator pedal is very sensitive, the brakes are not particularly strong, but with this 100 series generation, every system seems like it's working together in absolute fluidity. You know, that engine, the transmission, the way the engine and the transmission work together in absolute synchronization really makes you think about imagery of fluidity, you know, of actually feeling fluid moving through the engine. That's the only way I can describe the way that this vehicle handles and drives. Absolute fluidity. Now, coupled with that, of course, is the beautiful suspension. Of course, it would be amazing to get a coil spring in the front, but this vehicle didn't have a coil spring in the front. Toyota went with torsion bars. Now, a lot of people maybe don't understand torsion bars. A torsion bar is a very, very good piece of suspension equipment because it's simple, it's rugged, there's not much to do with it, not much maintenance. But obviously, if I had the choice, I would still go with a coil spring. It just gives better feedback of the road and handling. But Toyota went with a torsion bar, and yes, they didn't go with the torsion bar option again in another Land Cruiser. And so that's what makes the 100 series a bit unique in that aspect. But the 100 series is not lacking because of the torsion bar, guys. The two torsion bars hold the front end up. They hold the body, the weight of the vehicle, and then of course you've got either shock absorbers, or if you have an AHC equipped Land Cruiser, then you actually have hydraulic rams. Now, there are disadvantages, guys. There are disadvantages of torsion bars, and the one thing I would mention with the 100 series generation is try and keep it stock so you can maintain this kind of S-Class kind of ride. It is a beautiful ride. It is very peaceful. It's one of the best vehicles to daily drive. Extremely comfortable, and it's, you know, just like I always say, it is like driving around in your living room couch. Now, of course, the challenges do come when people want to modify these vehicles, and that is particularly why I got myself an 80 series generation. I don't believe that the refinement of the 100 series should be ruined by aftermarket suspension, particularly because of the way the 100 series is set up. I don't believe that Toyota imagined for it to be particularly lifted with lots of aftermarket suspension, and that's why they use the torsion bar setup, and that's why they have the AHC system, which makes it a bit complex to put aftermarket suspension, because you have to worry about leveling all four corners of the vehicle, and you may not arrive at the perfect leveling, and so the vehicle may not ride the way you expect. You know, it's commonplace, and a lot of people think that they go to aftermarket suspension to get more comfort. I must admit, this is a myth, guys. The most comfort that you're going to get is from the original Toyota suspension. There's just no two ways about it. Toyota knew how they were setting up these vehicles to absolutely go anywhere with reliability. And so as soon as you start to lift it, as soon as you start to change those angles of the CV axles, you are going to cause more wear and tear and more likely to break parts. And I must admit that a lifted 100 series is not particularly more capable than a stock 100 series. In fact, a stock 100 series will be in most cases more capable than a lifted 100 series. And that has to do with the fact that independent front suspension, when you lift it, you start to negate the travel of the wheel to the bump stops. So a lot of people will lift the front end of an independent vehicle, but when you're out on the big ruts and the big holes out in the off-road, you're not going to get that wheel travel. And the stock Land Cruiser 100 series will be able to get the full wheel travel up to the bump stop. And in a lot of cases, and I've tested this out, in a lot of cases, you can go out with buddies who have lifted 100 series and you will go just as far in your stock 100 series Land Cruiser. So highway driving, there's nothing that beats this. I call this the king of highway driving. It is just so refined, and I feel like I could just go thousands of kilometers continuously in this vehicle versus any other vehicle. It's just a fantastic place to sit, a fantastic cabin, a fantastic chair to be in, super comfortable, good support, lumbar, good support for the back. And then of course you got that beautiful leather, the leather smell. So the luxury amenities, true materials. And it's just a fantastic place to be. So, you know, other reasons the Land Cruiser 100 series is so loved is that it is very reliable. As long as you keep up with normal maintenance of oil and oil filters, this 2UZ-FE V8 petrol is one of the finest engines you can ever own. And especially coupled with this 5-speed transmission, you can barely tell that the vehicle is shifting, versus some of these modern vehicles where honestly the drivetrains are not refined at all compared to these older vehicles. A lot of cases where you will notice that a modern vehicle will not perform as better as these classic Land Cruisers. And that's just the sadistic nature of what we're getting with modern vehicles, which is planned obsolescence, and the idea of replaceability and building things so that they can last forever is simply gone with modern vehicles. And as you get older, and as I get older, I am certainly gravitating more and more towards the older vehicles, the ones that have proven themselves, the OGs, versus the shiny plastic that comes off the showroom shelves these days. Rounding up another beautiful day in Nairobi, the sun is setting, and there's no place I'd rather be than in my Land Cruiser Cygnus. I will never get sick of the wafty nature of this suspension and the yacht-like feeling, the yacht-like drive from the AHC, the hydraulic Toyota AHC suspension. It's a system that I will always love. It's a system that if I ever sell the vehicle, I know I will miss the driving characteristics, especially after a long day on a beautiful sunset drive. There is no vehicle that I feel more at home and just more at peace with on those long drives than this Land Cruiser Cygnus and this Land Cruiser 100 series. And as you own a vehicle, and as you own a vehicle for years and years, you certainly get attached to it. There's just no doubt about that. Now, I'm certainly not saying that the AHC is not without its issues, guys. It is a hydraulic system and it does have its limitations, you know. Not everything can be perfection in every aspect, but I've mentioned this several times that with the Land Cruiser 100 series, what the hydraulic suspension provides for this vehicle, together with the torsion bar setup and the way this suspension is set up, is that it allows this vehicle to do everything on the spectrum pretty well. I'm not saying it does off-roading excellent. I'm not saying it does highway driving excellent, but I'm saying that you can do everything with this vehicle and everything is done pretty well, which you will be hard-pressed to find another vehicle that you can say that about, guys. But with the 100 series generation, you got the refinement, you got the luxury feeling, you got the leather in the case of this Land Cruiser Cygnus or LX 470. You got the comfort, you got the yacht-like feel, but you do also have the solid axle, so you have the off-road credibility, you have the robust build quality of a Land Cruiser that comes from either the Tahara or the Hamura plant in Japan. And so you get the best of what Japan puts out there. And I must admit, the best of what Japan puts out there is almost the best of anything out there. Very, very durable, reliable build quality. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure you hit like, subscribe, comment down below. This is the Masai Gaines channel, where you can expect all the best automotive content, especially Land Cruiser content, right here in Nairobi, Kenya. Also, you guys in US, Australia, thank you for watching. All the other regions, Masai Gaines, the best automotive and Land Cruiser content. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Informative, trying to really lock down why the 100 series generation is just so special and so loved to me. And yeah, so it's been another episode. Masai Gaines checking out.